Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the Lightroom Fundamentals Workshop, where we're going to be learning the basics of Lightroom, how to navigate the software, importing your own images, creating presets, and essentially going through all the detailed tools that we have available for editing our photos. So, first of all, for those who don't know, Lightroom is essentially a editing software special for photos and color grading. So the difference between Lightroom and Photoshop is Photoshop, you would be manipulating the image, so cutting up pixels, removing and adding essentially items to your scene, as Lightroom is mainly just essentially color correction and color grading, especially with the new tools that we have available with the 2020 version of Lightroom. Actually, I think this might be 2021. So with that said, we're just going to be jumping into a series of short tutorials where we're going to be covering everything in depth. I'm going to be breaking this down into multiple different videos so you don't have to watch one long video and have to remember where specific tools are explained. And we're going to be going into some a little bit more intermediate stuff as well as we go through these tutorials. So in this really quick lesson, I just want to go over importing some files. So what we're going to be doing is we've got our basic Lightroom scene here. At the top, we've got our categories. So we've got our library and develop. These are going to be the two that you're going to be in the most. You don't really have to worry too much about these, but you can click through them and take a look at what they do if you want. But again, we're not going to be looking too much into these features. Now under library, on our left side here, we have our navigation. So our catalog, we have our folders, collections, and our publishing services, which we're not going to be using. Now, personally, I like to import things through folders. So I have everything in a neat folder stack, which has all my photos from a specific shoot. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're just going to be going over here to the plus icon. Now you can also come down here to File, and you can go to Import Photos and Videos if you would like. But I prefer to keep everything in a folder just for organizational purposes, and we're going to be going to here and just click Add Folder. Now I already have the folder created just with our raw files, and we're going to be clicking on that. You can navigate to your desired folder, and we're going to hit Select. Now what this is going to do is bring up our import screen here. No photos found. Alright, that's not right. We're just going to hit cancel here. Okay, so the photos are definitely there. Oh, okay, I know what happened. So we're just going to go back into folder here, and we're going to import this one here. Okay. And once that is finished, it's going to go ahead and find your photos. Just make sure they're all checked. You can obviously decide here if you would prefer not to import specific folders. And on the right side, we have a few options here like file handling and importing duplicates. Now, if you're dealing with a lot of folders, then you might have to look at the import duplicates, which gives you basically the option to not import the same file multiple times, and that will be based off the file name. So if you have one image that has the same name as another, it will flag that as a duplicate. But if you have the same image but it is named differently, it will not flag that as a duplicate. So here it is. Actually, don't import suspect duplicates. So I like to just keep that unchecked because personally, when I am importing folders into Lightroom, I make sure that all the photos that I want are in a specific folder, and if it's a duplicate folder, that's okay. Just for my organizational purposes, I will duplicate specific raw files into new folders and just import them fresh, and not so that I don't have to worry about like finding if I got a bunch of folders already imported. I don't have to worry about going between each folder and trying to find the specific photo that I'm looking for. So what we're going to be doing now is just hitting import, and we're going to come hit import down here. And what this is going to do is import our files, and it's also going to make our folder right here under our C drive, which is where it's saved. So if you have this under an external drive, it'll also give you another route to the external drive, and all your folders are here. So with that done, what we're going to be doing is going over to our Develop tab. And that's just going to give you a full screen preview, as well as a few more options on the left and your actual editing options on the right. So on the left, we just have our presets here, which you can, of course, add and manipulate your own presets. We've got our snapshots, which is a pretty cool feature. This is cool if you're developing your own presets. And of course, our history and collections. So our history is rather self-explanatory. If you do something, it's going to record it in your history. And we'll hit Control Z to just undo that, or the reset button down here. On the right side, up at the top here, we have our histogram. Now, our histogram is essentially telling us the color spectrum of our photo. So right now it's telling us we have a lot in the blacks. So if we just bring up our exposure to try and even out that graph here, about there, you can see we're properly exposed now and the graph is evened out. So with some specific images, let me see if I have an example here. Yep. So this one is a rather dark underexposed image, so you can see that our graph is telling us there's not a lot of highlight detail here, and we have to bring up the exposure to bring that back. Now the nice thing about shooting in RAW is you have that HDR capabilities to be able to play with the exposure and bring this back to a more neutral curve, something that looks like this, as opposed to the original like this, which is just a little too dark for editing purposes. So underneath this, we have our original photo. So this is just building a smart preview. I don't do this too much considering my computer is rather powerful. I think I'm running a 2070 RTX card as well as an i7. So I don't usually do this, but if you're finding that Lightroom is slowing down, you can build your smart previews, which essentially when you export, it will export the original photo. But it allows you to work on a smart preview and edit a smaller version of your photo to save you some RAM. So we're just going to hit cancel. Now underneath our original photo, we've got our tools here. These are our main set of Lightroom tools. So we've got our crop tool, spot removal tool. We have our red eye correction for those who take portraits and maybe use a flash. You get that red pupil kind of going on in the eye. This will correct that. We have our gradient filter, our radial filter, and our adjustment brush tool. So we're going to be going into these in separate videos, but this is where they're located. And if you're shooting in RAW, you'll also be able to see right here your camera settings when you took the photo, which I find is rather helpful, especially for someone that likes to take things at different f-stops, different ISOs, different shutter speeds, just to see the difference in image quality. So as we come down here, we've got our basic adjustments. So you can obviously immediately change it to black and white if you would like. Personally, I always keep it on color. Different Adobe Lightroom profiles. I always keep it on the default Adobe color, but you can play with these if you would like, and they just give you slightly different color profiles. Underneath that, we have our basic adjustments, so our temperature, our tint, things like exposure, contrast, highlights. We're going to be going into all this into our next video, but this is where it's located. Our tone curve, rather powerful but complex tool. Now we'll be going into this as well. We have our HSL sliders, which you can view in different ways if you would like. Personally, I like them on all because I like to just see all of them right here. Now this is our color grading palette, so this is rather new to the newer versions of Lightroom, but it allows us to essentially control our split toning, which is no longer in Lightroom, and it gives you a color for your midtones. So before we just had split toning, which would give us a shadows and highlights, and now we have the ability to control the colors in our midtones. So a little bit more power, really cool feature. This is very interesting. We're going to be covering this as well. Next we have our detail, where you're going to be adding your sharpening and that fun stuff, some lens correction where you can remove your chromatic aberration. For those who don't know what chromatic aberration is, that is essentially when you have a purple fringing, usually around edges where a dark surface meets a light surface. Now I don't think this particular photo has any of it. You can kind of see it, not so much. It's usually a purple color. Yeah, this photo actually turned out, here you can see it. So around this guy right here, around his watch, see how it's a very light surface here, kind of contrasting the dark. There's like a purple tone in here, and kind of a fringing on his shirt. So essentially the chromatic aberration feature here allows you to correct that a little bit, and you can also do it manually. Again, we're going to go into this in more detail. Further down we have our transform options, which is self-explanatory. These will just automatically allow you to level out your image using Lightroom's own processing. Next we have our effects, where you can add some vignetting, some nice vignetting to your image, as well as some grain. And lastly, we have the awesome calibration feature. This is one of the features why I love Lightroom Classic over the other Lightroom. The other Lightroom doesn't actually have this calibration feature, and it is so powerful. If you see those teal and orange videos, if you see those teal and orange photos, that is actually something like that. So just with a couple sliders, you can already see those kind of teal and orange colors coming in here. So very powerful tool. We're going to be covering this as well. So that is essentially it for the basics of Lightroom. Actually, I'm going to cover a couple things. Down here you've got your display of your photos, and as you can see, these have ratings. If you just click on one and say we'll give them a 2, so I do this for my selection process. Say you have 800 photos that you're going through. That's a lot of photos, honestly, but if you have 800 photos, you're going through them, I always like rate them. Usually start with 1, say I like this one, say I like this one, say I like this one. We'll just give a couple of these a number. I'm just hitting 1 on my keyboard, and you'll see a little star. And if we go to filters, we just go to rated, we can see our rated, and it kind of just allows you to narrow down the ones that you really like. So if you're a little unsure about a couple photos, you can just rate them 1s and then go through later and do another pass where you can rate them a 2, and then you'll just go to your 2, and yeah, so it'll just show you 2 and up. So this one's got a 5-star rating, but I'll just put it back to 2. If I hit 0, if I hit 0, it'll remove the rating completely. So we're just going to go filters off, and we're going to go through these and just put these back to 0. But I use this to just go through my shoots and really quickly determine which ones I like, which ones I don't think are so good, get rid of the ones that are blurry and whatnot. But that is essentially it for the basic navigation of Lightroom. Again, just to recap, we went over importing, we went over all the different features that you've got on the side here, as well as on the left here. Of course, this is rather self-explanatory. I kind of forgot this, our navigator. This will just allow you to kind of move around your image and see specific areas of your image. Oops. So we can kind of do different styles and stuff like this. Great for navigating your image. Personally, I just click, I keep it on fit, and when I have to zoom in, I just click and zoom, and you can click around and do what you got to do. Lastly, if you guys made it this far, I'm going to try and leave a comment section below the tutorial series. So if you have any questions, you can drop it there, any comments. You can even upload your own photos and show me what you learned from these tutorials. So yeah, that's it. I'll catch you in the next one.